Number one, they're wondering, okay, can it actually work for me? Will this actually resolve a problem that I'm having? The second thing they're wondering is actually about you. They're wondering, do you care enough about me for me to give you my money? Okay. I want to pause on that one for a minute, because if you have been really listening to advice of well-meaning uplines, I'm not throwing anyone under the bus, but we find that a lot of times people teach personal branding. And so they're just showcasing things that have benefited you, the trips that you can take, the products that you have to offer, and you don't showcase what you can actually do for somebody else. Why would they give you their money willingly?
Pull up a cup of coffee and let's get this party started.
We're the uplines you didn't know you needed, but now you have.
This is the podcast for women who are building a direct sales business but want to do it the right way.
Melanie has a decade of experience in direct sales. She's earned the top in industry 4 years in a row and has grown a multi-million-dollar organization. She gives a no BS approach to leadership, recruitment, and organization.
And my bestie Katie has you covered with the rest. From the relationships, the do's and don'ts of branding, her content has been viewed by millions. She doesn't just talk the talk, but she teaches people how to create an intentional brand too.
All right, let's get this party started.
Well, hey everybody, it is Melanie Mitro and Katie Ursta of the Direct Sales.
With my shine.
I know.
Our camera guy told me I had shiny hair today.
He did. You always do have shiny hair. I do not. But today we're talking about inviting, which inviting was the one.
Why'd you clear your throat like that? Because it's like that people hate talking about it. We just want to skip to the good part.
Yeah, which is creating social media content.
Or it is just closing sales or signing team members.
Yeah.
But the invite part is do I have to?
Yes.
You have to.
You do. And people literally avoid it and sometimes sort of fib how many invites they've actually sent.
I've sent 1 million invites, really?
Yeah. And really it's none. And so invites is especially for somebody that doesn't have any sales background, which neither one of us came to the direct sales space with any background in sales. So incredibly uncomfortable at first to invite, but once you do it and you have a process that feels good.
Yep.
And that's really the most important part, because we have been mentored by lots of people or have been in circles where people have done some things that we definitely were we don't want to be those kinds of people, right? We do not want to just go from A to Z and spam everybody on our list. But really inviting it's a craft, right? It's a skill. You've perfected. It's like playing a sport. The more you practice, the better you get, the more proficient and the more confident, and your success rate goes up. And so this really it's kind of a hidden truth. And a lot of people just want to talk about the things that are super sexy. And this really isn't, it's not one of them, but you should actually make it something that you're okay, this is going to be great. I'm going to enjoy that.
And we just talked about mindset, I think, last week.
Okay.
And it's great that we're talking about this, because you have to have the mindset to go into inviting. I like inviting. I enjoy having conversations. I love the product and the opportunity, and I get to extend this to somebody else. So I feel as though mindset towards inviting, if it's just you don't want to do it, it's going to come through the messaging too. Yeah. So that is just a shot.
It sure is. Okay, so before we just dive in, because we kind of jumped into inviting, let's just shout out one of our actual listeners over on iTunes. One of the things that we would really appreciate if you would head on over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. So we've got a 5-star rating from Stephanie 632. She says, I love listening to this podcast. I always come away with learning new information and or having an increased motivation. I truly look forward to listening every week. She says, thanks, Melanie and Katie. And so we appreciate you leaving us that review. Please, head on over there. It helps our podcast to be found by other direct sellers, social sellers, just like yourself. All right.
So we're diving right into invites. And it's probably important to note that both Melanie and I have no background in sales. So we're coming at it from the perspective of when we started our business, we didn't know what we were doing. Okay. And we really weren't good at it either. And we've even shown some old content that we've created in the past that is less than ideal. And my perspective, so just picture it, my perspective was ooh, I really love this. And I assume that if I talk about it, everybody else is going to love it too. And then I would start to get rejections. You know, I would get rejections from people I went to high school with. I would get rejections from neighbors. I would get rejections from family. And then I would go, okay, is it me or is it the products? But here, the truth was, it was actually neither. It was actually my approach to how I was extending the invite. I talk a lot about this idea of energy and empathy, like really loving what you're doing, but having an empathy and understanding for where currently people are in maybe their own struggle. And I was killing it with energy. I loved what I was doing. I would have sung the praises of my company from the high heavens. I just loved it. And to the extent that most people were probably incredibly turned off by it. Like, man, there's Katie again doing her workouts, slinging those shakes, and she really is chipper, talking about how you shouldn't go into the kitchen and have a snack and how like meal planning is so great, where really it was probably a like, what is this chick doing? But to me,
Yeah.
I just had an energy for what I was doing. I was excited. And I love that when you first come into the business, there is an excitement and an energy. But if we aren't careful with our energy and we can start to see rejections, we can start to go, is it me? Or maybe I joined the wrong company, or maybe I shouldn't be a part of this, when really it might just be our approach. So there's 3 things that we need to know people are thinking about when it comes to the opportunity that we offer or the product that we offer.
Okay.
Number 1, they're wondering, okay, can it actually work for me? Will this actually resolve a problem that I'm having? The second thing they're wondering is actually about you. They're wondering, do you care enough about me for me to give you my money? Okay. I want to pause on that one for a minute, because if you have been really listening to advice of well-meaning uplines, I'm not throwing anyone under the bus, but we find that a lot of times people teach personal branding. And so they're just showcasing things that have benefited you, the trips that you can take, the products that you have to offer, and you don't showcase what you can actually do for somebody else. Why would they give you their money willingly? So they're wondering in the back of their minds, do you actually care about me? Do you actually care enough about me for me to actually give you my money? And then number 3, and this is the good one, this is where really good inviting through conversation and through content really matters. And that is this. Can you prove question number 1, and can you prove question number 2? Can you prove to me that you can resolve a problem I'm experiencing? And can you prove to me that you care enough about me to give you my money? And that's where we have to start seeing, okay, how does this come into our conversations? How does this come into our invitations? How does this come out? Because if it feels very scripted, if it feels like you are just trying to make a sale, you're trying to make a sale, you're not making the sale. So let's actually go over these 8 golden rules. And these are kind of the 8 golden rules that I've created from my own experience, from what I've taught other people in the direct sales industry, and just through working at Chic Influencer with so many people across so many different direct sales industries. These are like the 8 golden rules of inviting. So let's dive into it. All right, you can take number 1.
Okay, so the first one is speak less and listen more. I love this one. And actually, when I was preparing for today's episode, I started to think about my Aunt Sue. So my Aunt Sue, I haven't really talked about her on the podcast, but my Aunt Sue is the best listener I have ever met.
Okay.
When you sit down with her at any family gathering, she will sit next to you and she will look you in the eyes and she listens intently. There is not another person in the world, and she wants to know, how's your business? Where are you traveling to? And then she asked me, who are you meeting? And are you having fun? And what are you going to do next? And what are the boys up to? And she just listens without any other care other than genuinely wanting to know what you're up to, wanting to, just be excited for you. And so I was thinking about that because I'm guilty of this sometimes when I'm having a conversation with somebody, especially when it's like through the DMs. I'm like, just get to your point so that I can tell you what I want you to buy.
Yeah.
Or get to your point so that I can just tell you. And so I think about Aunt Sue a lot when I'm having conversations. And that's something that I've really worked on in my own career, is how do I genuinely listen and ask more questions? Because the more that, or even, and I know we're gonna talk about this too, but like speaking less, like just sitting there without another agenda, just listening. Because when you ask somebody a question and you just listen, they will tell you their life story.
Yeah.
And it's really powerful because if people don't know that you care about them, like I know Aunt Sue cares about me. And honestly, she cares about everybody. She will do this to strangers on the street.
Yeah.
When we travel together and we meet somebody, like it's a good 20-minute conversation with some random stranger because she genuinely is interested and she wants to hear about you. So the first thing is really actually kind of zipping your lips. And maybe it's like you actually have to say to yourself, I'm just going to listen. I'm just going to listen. And if thoughts start coming in, if I want to say this, I want you to push it out of the way. I want you to just really challenge yourself to be fully present in any conversation you're having without an agenda to make a sale, but just to be present. Because that is like step number 1 of building trust.
All right. So speak less, listen more. Okay, check. Number 2, ask more questions. This is kind of like your objections arsenal. So when you find yourself in a position where you're getting like rejections or you're getting no's or you're getting like ghosts, I think the best thing to do is to learn more about the person and the problem they are experiencing, because as you do that, you can begin to really create this sort of like kit of here is what I'm going to throw out if they give me this objection. And the only way you do that is by asking people more questions. When you ask more questions about the problem that they are experiencing, the desire that they really have, the more that your solution becomes viable to them. So 2, ask more questions. Let's go to number 3.
All right, number 3 is identify the problems and speak to the solution. So when you're having a conversation and you've figured out through the questions that you've just asked what the problems are, and I'll just give you an example of this to kind of put it into context. When I was talking to people in my inbox about fitness and wellness, they would tell me, you know, they're raising small kids and it's really hard to find the time to exercise and their kids don't like to eat healthy meals and they find themselves having to cook multiple meals. I would be listening and then I would do something where I actually related to them. And it was very genuine, but I would be like, oh my gosh, I totally know what you mean. My kids are really picky eaters too. One of the things, and this is one of my favorite recipes. I'll actually share it. I always say it's like kid tested and husband approved. The chicken fingers, my kids don't even know that they're homemade and that they're healthy. They think that they're like Chick-fil-A chicken fingers. And then I also give other pieces of advice too. Like, you know, this is one of the healthy swaps that we do and I talk about how slowly we began to introduce other things. I didn't just jump into what I was selling, but in this process, I was identifying their problems. They don't want to cook multiple meals. I gave a piece of advice where I said, here, try this recipe. So I actually gave them value, something that they could take back and use, which increased their level of trust in me because I was willing to kind of hear their problem and give a suggestion. And then I make the transition. Like this is something I do in my accountability groups, right? Every single week, I'm sharing kid-friendly, husband-approved recipes that our whole family loves. And you know what? Most of us are moms in the group too who don't have a lot of time. And so one of the things we always talk about is how we're just making it work and how we're taking imperfect action. So you don't have to worry about ever being perfect. So what I'm doing is she's told me what her problems are. I've identified them. I've actually spoke to the solution and embedded that into the product that I'm actually serving them with.
I love that. Because remember too, your product and your experience with the product, the way you showcase it, it can't be about you. It has to be why it's a solution to them, why it's going to resolve the problem for them. All right, so number 4 kind of goes back to what I said about asking questions. But a lot of times when you're asking questions, you can anticipate that they're also working through fears and objections that they're having in their mind, especially if it's a really good conversation where you're going back and forth. And then usually what happens is they get stuck on something like, I don't know if I have time for that, or it's just really out of my price range. And so if you have now banked information about the problem they are experiencing, the desires that they have, this one works so beautifully. And it takes confidence to ask this one. So I can say that at the very beginning of my business, I couldn't have imagined asking this question. But I find now at this point, I'm down with asking this question because I'm so confident in what I have to offer. So tip number 4 is ask permission to ask the hard questions. Gain permission to ask the hard questions. Questions like, okay, are you serious about wanting to make a change, or are you just afraid of hurting my feelings? Questions like, are you going to let that fear continue to hold you back, or are you going to actually invest in yourself? Or questions like, do you think maybe you failed in the past was because you actually weren't invested? Ooh, like kind of uncomfortable, but also a gut check for the client. The reason we want to gain permission is because it does get them to, number one, lean in a little bit closer. And number two, they actually have to combat their own objections head on. So when you say to somebody, do I have permission to ask you a question? They kind of go, oh, snap, like what's coming? Like it makes them actually uncomfortable, but also very curious. So you can assure yourself that they're listening. They're not distracted. When you say, do I have permission to ask you a question? There's nothing else around them that has their attention. And it also makes them realize that you care enough about them to ask the hard questions. We all have people in our lives that ask us tough questions, and they're the people who are usually closest to us. They are the people that we let in. So if somebody is going to go, I'm giving you all these objections, I have all these reasons to not do it, and then you say, okay, but do I have permission to ask you a question? It's almost like it halts everything and makes the person on the other side go, yeah, what's up? Like, what do you want to ask me? And then you ask these uncomfortable questions that aren't surface level at all. It makes them think. It makes them really go, huh, all right, I understand what you're saying. So number 4 is gain permission to ask uncomfortable questions.
Love it. Number 5 is marry the output, which is your effort, so that you can divorce yourself from the outcome. So here's the thing. I always say don't count your chickens before they've hatched, because there have been a lot of times in my experience where I will have sent 10 invites. I will have 3 people that say, I'm in. I can't wait until payday. I'm going to, make my purchase, or I just need to check with my husband, but I'm definitely going to do it. Or, they tell me that they're invested. They're going to make that decision. Yes. And there has been multiple times where I have actually put them into the yes category, counted them as new customers for the month. And then what happened is they stopped responding to my messages. Friday was payday. They didn't respond back. And then all of a sudden they've ghosted me and have ignored me no matter what I'm saying. And so what happens is that I risk missing my goal because I really counted on that person to make the purchase. Right. And so instead, what I want you to start focusing on is marrying your effort, right? So it doesn't matter what somebody says they're going to do. We want to have control. And that's why sometimes even in direct sales, people give their power away. Oh, my customers cancel, or oh, people are always ghosting me. Well, you know how you control that is by talking to more people. Sure. It's by starting more conversations, making more friends, creating more eye contact. And so if you begin to have that thought process of, I'm going to put forth this work ethic that no matter what a person says, yes or no, I'm going to continue building relationships and trust so that I reach my goal, whether or not Sally says yes or no, because I've got other conversations that are actually happening. And that to me is really empowering, because that's something I can take a hold of and I can really control.
Yeah. Well, let's go to number 6.
Okay.
And I don't necessarily think I can cover the importance of follow-up in one episode. I feel like that would be an episode. And this is also something we cover in a lot of detail in the Direct Sales Done Right Academy. It's also something that we work on with our community members.
We do.
And in fact, in the month of May, one of our trainings was all about successful follow-ups.
Yes.
So instead of talking about follow-up how-tos, I'm going to say this. The fortune is in the follow-up. It's not just a cliche. It's not just an old saying. It really is. People need time to consider your offer, and they need to know, again, that you care enough to continue to pitch the offer to them.
Yeah.
But this is also the place where there is so much lost opportunity. So here are a few reasons, in my humble opinion, why you might not be following up. Number 1, you're actually not very organized with your invites. So if you're tracking your business just on the DMs that you have, you're losing people. You are 100% losing people. Your inbox is probably everywhere. You got Facebook, you got Instagram, maybe you got TikTok. I'm not sure, but I can tell you, if you don't have an organizational system for the invites, you sure as heck probably don't have an organizational system for who you have to follow up with each month. Number 2, you might be nervous about getting rejected. Rejection is part of the process. And I know that for me, when I got in the flow of really sending invites and doing it consistently, I kind of looked forward to getting rejections because I was like, sweet, it's a follow-up for next month. Like I actually have someone on my follow-up list.
Right.
So I was excited about my list. I was excited about, I have an invite list. But then as I had a growing follow-up list, that was good because it gave me more people to converse with later. Number 3, you're scared of being off that girl. You are scared of coming off as salesy or desperate. A follow-up to me, if somebody remembers to follow me, I take note of it now at this point. Because there are many times where I've inquired about products or services. A lot of times, 2 people in direct sales, I never hear back from them. If I don't order, they basically go, it must not have been for her. But what if I just needed more time? Or what if I just got busy and forgot to respond back? That's on you. It again goes back to your efforts, your output versus the outcome. And then finally, you probably are just assuming it's a no. You're just assuming that they're not interested. So you just don't follow up. Well, if they really wanted it, they would ask me. That's not really true. I think of my buying habits. And if I feel as though somebody actually isn't following up with me, that I really don't matter much to them. So that's like really that's like the truth bomb of really inviting is if you're not following up with people, you're throwing away money. You're throwing away money. All right, go to number 7.
All right, number 7 is depersonalize the objection. Okay, so this is a real deal. How many of you listening are going, every time somebody gives me an objection, I think it's me. It's about me. I'm a bad person. I must be doing it wrong, right? I'm not meant to be in this direct sales business. I'm not good at this. So we go into me. Everything is wrong with me. Well, it's not you. Most of the time, it's not you, right? But you have to take yourself out of it. You have to understand that the person on the other side of the screen has their own life that they're going through right now. And, your situation is not theirs. And there is a book, and I can't remember what it is with the smiley face on it. Do you know which one it's talked about being happy? And
Find your happy or?
It's like the daily gratitude practice. Yes.
What is happy? I don't know. Joy-filled life.
Yes, that's it. And in there, he talks about that in that book. They actually talk about, you might be driving down the road and somebody actually flips you the bird. And instead of being like, oh, I'm a bad driver, like maybe they are actually rushing and they're on their way to the emergency room because something happened to a family member and they just had an outburst in the moment. And so actually starting to look at all the good in the other person instead of just saying it's about, and that book is really great if your mindset isn't all that awesome and you need to create more joy. But those things have helped me to really say this person's objection is not a reflection of who I am as a person. So to really take yourself out of it and then really say to yourself, all right, this is their objection. Where can I meet them at in the process? How can I still find a solution where I'm getting some sort of yes in the end? So that really is, if somebody says like, I just can't afford it, it is really me saying, okay, I really want to help you. I know your goal is to do X, Y, and Z. Do you have a budget that we can work with? Maybe we can strip down the package that I presented into something simpler. It's not going to be all the bells and whistles, but it'll at least get you started. So again, that taking the personal out of it allows me to then serve the person better.
Right. And that leaves us with the last tip. And it does flow very well into depersonalizing the objection, which is you can't get mad, get curious. I will never forget hearing this from a mentor in my direct sales business who would use it for when it comes to not losing weight, but I think it applies here perfectly. And that is you can't get mad. If you find yourself getting mad, you can't be curious too. You can't be angry and curious at the same time. So if you get angry and say, I got another rejection, or nobody wants what I have to offer, or this market is so saturated, or I came in too late. If you find yourself going down that rabbit hole, you actually aren't opening the doors to curiosity. And curiosity means you can innovate, you can think at things differently, you can change the way you're viewing the way that you're sending your invitation. So for example, if you look at your invitation and you go, I can't seem to close the sale, but maybe I'll go back and look at the questions I'm asking. Maybe there's something in there that I can tweak. Or, you know what, I never really get to my point very fast. I'm going to go to those scripts that Melanie and Katie have in the Direct Sales Done Right Academy and pull those out and actually change up the way that I'm doing a little bit. So also, the last tip is you just can't get mad about it. You get curious. When you stay curious, you stay innovative. When you stay innovative, you continue to see results. So don't get mad. Just get curious about why. All right. I think we covered a lot with inviting. It is really hard to discuss inviting in detail in a very short episode of the Direct Sales Done Right podcast, but that also is a great opportunity for you to say, maybe I need to be in the Direct Sales Done Right Academy and get my hands on some of these more in-depth trainings too.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
let's do a quick testimonial.
Okay, let's do it. This one is from Brooke Chachala, and she says, this has been the best 2 months ever now that I'm fully implementing the plan that Melanie taught in the Rockstar Recruitment course. It's insane. And I will tell you, just this past week inside of the Rockstar Recruitment Facebook group that we run for our members, she was saying that she had recruited just 3 new team members in the past 48 hours, which was incredible. And she just felt so much more confident in her approach. So I love that so much. And again, you can always check us out at chicinfluencer.com to see the ways that we can serve you in your direct sales business.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll see you next time on the Direct Sales Done Right podcast.
All right. So if you loved today's episode, make sure you head over to wherever you listened to the episode today and leave us a rating and review. And also take a little screenshot and tag us on Chic Influencer. We'll feature you in our stories. Plus, we'd love to get your feedback and hear from our listeners.
Until next week, let's make chic happen.